This is the October 7th meeting of the Orange County Finance Committee. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Edna, Bill on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
I would, if it's all right with everyone, I'm not sure where it appears here, I'd like to ask, is Rachel Sievers here with a matter that involves ACC. We have President Duffy here as well. Rachel, if you, we're all yours.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Recently, all supervisors were emailed out a copy of a proposed resolution for your consideration at the October board meeting. We did, in fact, table a different resolution at our September board meeting, and we did so because there needed to be additional clarification on the content of that resolution. And I think that we, as a board, got a little confused in several different factors that were in front of us. One of those being a potential project for the NSTEM building, and then also clarifying capital projects that we needed to address and give approval for as a board. On that initial resolution, there was some information that was not required to be on that resolution, and we have met with the college at length, amended that resolution. In fact, amended's the wrong word, we threw it out. And we recognize that even if we had passed that, the state could not have accepted it. So we are now kind of behind the 8 ball with the college. So what I am asking from our board is to take a look at that new resolution that everyone has been emailed out with a memo explaining why it had been changed. I think most specifically the questions that were that had arisen at the meeting came from, is this our money? Is this Warren Washington County money? And the answer to that is this $400,000 of a local share is chargeback money. No one is sitting here before you asking to pay $400,000 towards these improvements that were detailed in that resolution. Now, I'm smart enough to know that there's an expert in the room, and while I have taken great lengths to get up to speed on this, I am not your expert on it. So we've asked our president, Chris Duffy, to come and speak with you and answer any questions you might have about the new resolution, as well as having a separate discussion regarding the NSTEM project because of their unique time frame that is in front of them to move forward with that project. If it would please the chairman, I'd like to have Chris speak.
President Duffy.
Thank you. Also going to invite Vice President John.
Okay.
She's even more of an expert.
I know she is. Welcome.
Yes,
welcome.
Thank you.
And she's from Bolton.
Yeah. Good place. Is it okay if I just talk here?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, just as to kind of go backwards, we did have a joint committee meeting of the Community College Committee and the Finance and Audit Committee back in August to propose what we typically do on an annual basis is a list of our anticipated capital projects for the coming year. And as you may recall, we do this on an annual basis where we then submit the projects to the state to see if they will be approved. For most of the history of community college funding for capital, once projects are submitted to the state approves a 50% match so that at least it gets on a list of expected projects, and then whatever that share of the cost, I'm going to just be careful of words because it's when it gets confusing, but that college share of the cost, so to speak, is something then that we have to identify. And so we do this every year. They're usually deferred maintenance projects for the most part, and the money that we use to match the 50% match is what is called local share, but local share is made up of several items. And we use our capital chargeback money. That's the money that we get per FTE from students who go outside of this county to other, students that come from other counties to attend Adirondack, and we charge back an amount to those counties. We get both an operating chargeback and a capital chargeback. That's the only source of capital money that we currently have, and that's what we submit each year as an amount to match for our projects. So what you saw on that list of projects were ways in which we were going to ask the state to match our projects. And so that's something you've done every year. But I think what really kind of confounded, I think, the confusion is the words NSTEM in there, and that we have this other conversation going on about the NSTEM project and the request for county support on that particular project. So we think we've hopefully been able to resolve that. The resolution that you have in front of you is the resolution language that's required by us, by SUNY. So it very specifically outlines, and have to put specific language in there in order to meet the state's requirements, and that's the resolution that you have in front of you. And what we're asking for is your approval for us to submit those projects to the state in order to receive the 50% match. It doesn't necessarily mean, just like in many municipalities, you could put projects out to the state for approval, but you don't actually start the projects until you have the full funding, which is something we would always do. We never would start a project without the full amount of funding. But there's no obligation within that request that requires the county to support any of those requests to date. Those are all, we listed out what the different matches would be, whether it be the foundation, whether it would be the capital chargebacks that we receive from other counties, whether it's FSA funding, or if it's a private grant. And that's the only obligation those are the only sources of funding that we have for those projects. So hopefully I haven't made it more complicated.
I think it answers the principal, I think, Bud, does that answer, your question?
Yeah, and just for the record, I was never confused about this being, an approval for the buildings. I'm not sure anybody else was, but the only thing that caught my eye was that we were buying $4 million worth of furniture for the NSTEM building, and we haven't got the NSTEM building approved yet. That was my primary concern.
Yeah, maybe you could address that,
Yep,
cause I know
so-
Supervisor, Brock also had that as a question.
Okay, yep. So, in order to, equip any new building projects, we've already had the NSTEM project technically approved by the state. So the next phase is that, and the foundation had committed to say, this is how we'll help you furnish and equip that new building, should it ever be built and should it be, started. That they committed to raise $2 million to help equip both the NSTEM project, which is a renovation addition project, as well as if we were funded for the Workforce Readiness Center, which is a separate project that we've applied for state money through a program called SUNY 2020 Challenge Grant. So we have two different kind of capital projects there. So they committed to raise $2 million to support equipping both of those buildings, and we are able to get a 50% match for that, so we would want to go to the state and say, look, if we're able to do these projects, this is how we're going to equip it, and here's the source of funding that's going to help fund half of that, so state, would you be willing to fund the other half of it? Again, that money doesn't get spent if the buildings don't get built, but rather than wait until after the fact, if it was approved, it's, again, the course of business to get it on the state's list. If it doesn't get approved, the money just sits there until such time that we're able to use it, just as we would do that with with the two building projects. So that's why it was on the list of requests for capital appropriations. And again, if, say, the foundation doesn't raise that money, there's the only way, and let's say we built the building, but the foundation didn't raise the money, we would have to find money in our own operating budget to figure out how to equip it. But we have confidence that we'll be able to raise the money. We felt like that was a pretty realistic goal. The foundation board also agreed, and so that's what they committed, so we want to get the 50% match to basically double the amount of money to support all of our equipment and facilities needs.
All righty, any other questions? Bud? We're gonna be printing it out here, we'll hold action on this until the board members have hard copies, and you have your hard copy but we'll defer action on this until we're printing them right now, I believe. Rachel?
We are, and may I also just, for one last time, ask the members of the board that are here, along with the members of the finance committee, there was a lot of discussion that took place, particularly after the committee meeting, on how you came up with that $400,000. Perhaps the wrong word is confused, Supervisor Taylor, but there were many questions around that, and I just want to make sure that moving forward, it is not our intention to hold up this project as a board. And are there any additional questions regarding just the total dollar amount, where that money is coming from?
Doesn't appear there are. So we'll defer on this, if you could just hold on for a second. Jim Fitzgerald's here. Is Jim still here? Hey, Jim. We're all yours. What's
500.
Hello, I'm Jim Fitzgerald, Warren County SPCA. We're here, I brought Chris Hickey, he's our treasurer for the SPCA. I brought Chris here to go over our financial situation moving forward. in 2016, and what our concerns and needs are for the community, and how to move forward with these concerns and needs. I'm really gonna leave this one up to Chris, because it's a financial, thing, and he's our financial guy.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Again, just a bit of a history of what's happened with the Warren County SPCA. It's been in existence since, I think, dating back to the early 60s. Primarily a volunteer organization to provide humane services to abused, neglected, and stray animals throughout the county. It's been almost entirely done through volunteerism and has largely been funded for years, or at least the last several years, through a fairly large donation that was made to the Warren County SPCA, and a very nominal, or at least what I would consider nominal amount from the county. Our contract last year called for $8,000 from the county. The board of the Warren County SPCA about a year ago really approached Jim and said, and I think Paul, and said, we want out. We don't see the long-term viability of this organization in the county, and we're ready to walk away. And Jim, to his credit and his passion for animals, really stepped up and said, no, you know, we'll take it over, and reached out to me and Darlene and John and a few other people to really take on the challenge of converting what has been, and I want to be careful I don't use terms that, you know, end up in the Post-Star and offend people, a pretty dysfunctional process of doing animal control throughout the county. And Jim has taken on that, has a great vision for what the Warren County SPA should be doing for the county and for the residents of the county. So far, we're on average to respond to about 2,900 calls for the county, within the county. And that's not even counting calls that are occurring in the town of Queensbury, because you may know Jim is, his full-time job is the animal control officer for the town of Queensbury. So this is separate and distinct from that. And the reality is, this organization has been significantly depleting this large donation that it has. Right now, they have about $80,000 left in the bank from this very large donation that was made. I'm estimating that if we didn't receive any contracts from any other organizations, that $80,000 probably would only last us one more year, if that. The challenges associated with this really come down to providing the necessary staff and resources to fund this. The volunteers won't and can't continue to do it. It's just not feasible for it to continue to be done by a group of volunteers. So we have to come up with a staffing model, and are working on a staffing model that would allow the organization to continue to answer calls. My understanding is that there's an enormous amount of complaints in relationship to stray animals, neglected animals, and that since Jim took this over about a year ago, that those have reduced significantly. The problem is Jim's doing this without any compensation other than paying mileage for what Jim is doing. We've also begun the process of constructing a building that can be used to impound these animals that are taken in. Currently, they're impounded with one of the local animal hospitals, and the cost of that is averaging about $3,000 a month to provide that impounding service to these animals. Totally unsustainable in the long term in relationship to the contract that we currently are operating under with the county. So the combination of providing that facility to be able to support the need in the county, in addition to the staffing to be able to go out and do what they have to do to get these animals where they belong and taken care we're asking for the committee to increase, and hold on to your seats here, increase the amount of funding for us to go from the $8,000 current contract to $100,000 on an annual basis. Now, one might sit and look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of money. That comes out to about $45 per call. You know how big the county is. You know the gym is all over the county, and the volunteers that are currently doing it are all over the county addressing issues, and that $45 per call is really a pretty small cost of doing that. Now, that $45 that I've said would include ultimately having a model that compensates the people who are doing this, and because we can't continue to do it with volunteers. So, any questions?
Mr. Dickinson, Supervisor Dickinson?
Mr. Hickey, right?
Yes.
Lake George is participating in this program. We've been very, very pleased with it on a number of faces. Are all the other towns participating financially, or?
Great question. Currently, we have contracts in place with 2 towns within the county, Lake Luzerne and Lake George. Those are the only current towns that are participating, and we have in-force contracts with. We are in conversations with the city of Glens Falls. We have a proposal out to them as well to begin to provide the services to Glens Falls, so we're optimistic that we'll be able to do that. I think the long-term goal is to eventually have a contract with every town within the county. I think that's going to take time, but I think in order to be able to support this long-term, that's going to be, I think that's going to be the direction that we're going to have to go in.
Well, here's my spiel. Since we've done that, we had a single animal control officer. He was ready to retire, so it worked out well for us. He did do that. We've contracted with the SPCA. They have been very responsive to every call we've had. They have been very good with the bookkeeping. We have and will continue to donate the funds that we had for our other animal control officer to the SPCA. The thing that I really like about it is they're very professional with uniforms. The cars are marked. You know, when your neighbor calls and complains about your dog at 1 o'clock in the morning and you look out the window and you see some strange car out there, it's a lot different than looking out and seeing a dog control officer. Now you know who's there, and you know why he's there, and it just worked out really well for us, and I think it's really something that the rest of the towns, hint, 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 should really start thinking about.
Mr. Merlino?
Yeah, I'm Lake Luzerne, Supervisor Lake Luzerne, and I'm just happy with what this gentleman has done for our town. In 10 years I've been there, we had a dog control officer for 9 years, and she was wonderful. Loved animals, great job. But the problem we always had was she was too passionate. And when you had 2 neighbors arguing about dog barking and everything, she got too involved in the passionate part instead of this. And now, since Jim has taken over, we get notified by email every time something happens. I haven't gotten one call from the disgruntled homeowner that our dog warden isn't, doing the job. So that's why we put it back in our budget again for next year.
Yeah, and just Jim's passion for what he does is, undeniable. He's got an enormous passion for this, and he has a great vision for what we're doing. Professionalism has been the first thing that he came about. Our people are uniformed, they're well equipped, we've got the vehicles, we've got the facility. So you've got the infrastructure to do that. And why we're here right now is if we don't get the people to do that. I keep telling Jim, you won't continue to do this out of the goodness of your heart. It's not going to happen. We can't depend on that in the long run. So that's really why we're here. We're here because we have to really staff what's been built in terms of an infrastructure to be able to continue to do that in the long term.
Peter?
I just would like to make a comment and maybe address the question secondly, relative to your new facility, which is being built with volunteer to having a local contractor and his efforts to volunteer pretty much 100% of his time to build this facility. That being the secondary comment. But let me just make a question that I'd like you to address, okay? But maybe make a quick comment, and this goes back to show you the dysfunction of in the past, the city of Glens Falls when it comes to taking care of pets. And this goes back very briefly to 11, 12 years ago. Saturday morning, wake up, go out to get my Co-Star, and there are 2 Alaskan Malamutes in front of my house. Obviously, no owner, broken off their leashes. I go out, I encourage the 2 Alaskan Malamutes to come in my backyard. I feel comfortable, I feel confident, recognizing that a Malamute is a large animal and could be a tad uncontrollable. I give them water, I give them food, I become their buddies. I make a phone call. Who shows up? The Glens Falls Police Department. Officer Jones, who is supposed to be out looking for criminals, but his responsibility is to pick up dogs, get them in his vehicle, and take them up to West Mountain Road somewhere.
Shoot 'em.
I call him, comes to my house, he looks in my backyard, and this poor guy almost has a heart attack. Okay? He has got to get 2 Alaskan Malamutes in his car, and I can tell, he is frightened of these dogs. I say, hold on, Charlie. I grab one of them, we go out, we get him in the back car. We get him in the back seat. I then get the other one. But my point is this, that is, at least was, I don't know if is an insane system to take care of those kind of issues. You have a policeman trained to do a specific job, and he's out acting, he's doing Jim's job. So I just wanted to make that comment, to just point out, in the city, it has not been working, and maybe just quickly address what you're doing with your new facility, which I think is being built in Queens.
Correct. And Jim, you can pipe in if you like to. I mean, one of the things that Jim has been very, very successful in is his relationships with law enforcement, whether it be the sheriff's department or whether it be town police departments. Because yes, absent Jim, the responsibility for animal control, and you hate to say this, falls on law enforcement. I mean, it's municipality's responsibility to have animal control, some sort of animal control. And absent an SPCA, who does it but Officer Charlie, who comes to your house and tries to get those dogs in the back of your car. So one of the things Jim has really focused on over this last year is really developing that relationship with the sheriff's department, with the local law enforcement agency. Haven't done it much in Glens Falls because Glens Falls has a separate contract to do that currently, which we're looking to take over. And the problem with that is, and it's the problem that I think a lot of towns are having, is that absent specific contractual obligations with Jim, it's a little bit of this. Well, that's not my responsibility, or I'm not responsible for dogs, or I'm a cat person, that's the dog person. That a lot of that is happening throughout the county, is that depending on whether it's a cat or a dog, people expect somebody different to take care of those 2 situations. Not to mention all the other challenges that you might have from an animal control, like wildlife and other animals that are a potential issue as well.
If we could, please.
I don't know, was there a specific
I see
question?
Supervisor Seaver had her hand up, and then the committee will come back to the committee.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I just want to clarify a point. Back in January, as a board, we discussed this issue. We made a decision to increase the funding from 2014 to 2015 from $8,000 to $20,000. That's our current level of funding, and that going forward, we've discussed that there is a huge deficit as a result of the services that you're providing in Warren County. And at that time, those discussions, at the Board of Supervisors, we had talked about revisiting the fact that we understood the $20,000 would not cover the the services that are needed, and that as a board, we would revisit that again this year. I believe this is the appropriate time, and I'm interested to hear, if that 100,000 completely covers that deficit, or are you using any other type of, money to offset that?
Nope, $100,000 would completely offset that deficit.
So I was just asking as a board member for that consideration from this committee.
I think the committee, at this stage, this has to go to budget. It can just be referred to budget, by motion of the committee, or it could be referred to budget with, the recommendation of the committee. What's the pleasure of the committee? Mr. Dickinson?
I'd like to, refer it to the budget committee, and I'd like to have this committee's endorsement. Animal control in the county is crucial. We have large populations of once house animals that are now feral, and the issues go on and on. This isn't a lightly taken thing. We have to be serious about this. And there are instances where it can be really serious in your community, and it would be very reassuring to have trained professional animal control officers. So that's my motion. And
Heard the motion. Is there a second to the motion? We have a motion, Mr. Sokol, thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And now we can return to ACC. Thank you for being patient. You all have the hard copy of the new resolution in front of you, and the pleasure of the committee is what? Mr. Dickinson?
I'd like to move on this motion.
We have a motion to approve the resolution as presented. Do we have a second? A second. Bill's on the second. Any further discussion? Mr. Merlino?
Could I ask just one question? I'm just always stumped on some of these things that I wanna get. All right, so I understand, we're talking 400,000, now this says 5 million. It's just confusing me, but the only question I really have, and the numbers I'm not too worried about, because I know, this one part says that the sponsors are Warren County and Washington County, and down at the bottom, the resolution states that the sponsors, that Warren County and Washington County, shall share the cost of the project, or also accumulated with the capital chargeback. Now, you explained that. That was my only question. So even though we're sponsors, it's going back to the chargeback. Should we really be on there as a sponsor, because we're not being involved in it? Or just because we have to vote on it?
So, it does get confusing. I told Rachel, it took me 5 years to learn this in and out. So, SUNY requires very specific language in the resolution, and, it needs to be a sponsor's resolution, which is why you're in there. It needs to recognize a 50% commitment from the sponsors, which is paid for by local share, which is made up of 3 sources. So chargebacks, cash contributions from the sponsor, or private sources and grants. So I try when I detail this out for you to say, okay, we need the total project amount of the 5.3 million. We're asking the state to fund half of that and the sponsors to commit to half of that, which is the 2.6. And then I tell you further that that 2.6 will be paid for by capital chargebacks and private sources, to let you know that it's not requiring a sponsor cash contribution. Does that help? Okay.
Any other questions? There being none, are you all set, Jane? Ready for the question? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is carried. Thank you, and thank you for your patience today. Rachel?
Just to point out, I understand we have a busy agenda in the morning, it's very lengthy. In the future, we have discussed, having a joint finance and college meeting, preferably within the timeframe that the college needs to have a serious conversation about the NSEM, building. I would just ask, Chairman, that we set that meeting date, perhaps not now, but shortly after this meeting, so that we can address that as soon as possible.
What I would ask is that we coordinate with Washington County and the college and the committee to see what date might be reasonable. And,
with all due respect, I think that the intent of the committee was to meet as Warren County, not jointly with Washington County.
Oh, I see. You want to meet with tourism and finance.
The college committee and finance.
The college committee, excuse me. Apology. We can arrange that. We'll arrange that. Thank you.
Chairman? Been here too long.
I've been here too long today.
Yeah, missed
I'm
lunch.
At a board meeting last night, I'm fading. Bud?
Just a quickie, the intent of holding off the meeting was to have the 5-year plan done. Is that ready, Paul?
It is done, and the plan was originally to, present it after this meeting. I don't know if you're ready for that today or not.
I would just like to say, as chair of budget committee, that, I would recommend that if the budget committee meeting is postponed, or, reschedule it. Other supervisors that had things to do, Supervisor Marino said at the meeting, he set up, I chatted him, he's out for a week. So I think, what we've, done today and what we still have to do, I would recommend.
I'll second that.
Alrighty, well, I'm not sure what action other than, if it's cancellation cancellation, simple, declaration by the chairman, is that sufficient?
I believe so.
I believe that's all that's necessary, right?
Consider it canceled then.
There you go.
Request for transfer, no, not yet. Request for transfer of funds attached for committee approval. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 3.
Make a motion.
Evelyn, on the second. Supervisor Merlino, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of the request for transfer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 4, request from the Treasurer's Office. Request for a transfer of funds in the amount of $400 from Budget Code A893.00, Reserve Environmental Testing, to Budget Code A4120, 436, County Attorney, advertising to cover advertising costs for Warrensburg parcel number 211.13-3-35, that the county has taken temporary Title II for testing purposes. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 4A.
Move that.
Moved by Dickinson, second by Jean Merlino. Any discussion? Any questions? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 4A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4A is carried. 4B, a request for a contingent fund transfer in the amount of $16,000 to Budget Code A1325-210, Treasurer's Furniture Furnishings, to replace office furniture that is 50 to 60 years old with newer models that will provide more efficient, improved ergonomics and take up less space while providing better appearance. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 4B to the floor. Bill, on the second. Mr. Dickinson, Mike, what do we have here?
Well, we gave up about 350 square feet of our, excuse me, I've been here a long time too, apparently, of our office space to public health, so that they could comply with some regulations that they had to deal with. And what that did was it cramped us up, and I looked around and realized that we don't have the room for the desks that were original to the building and the little pieces of add-on that we've done over the years with a file cabinet, a piece of board here and there for the staff. When we were looking at this loss of space, I talked with Paul about it, and he suggested that if we had some money in contingency at this point in time, maybe I could come forward and ask for money for 11 workstations, basically, to replace all of the antiquated stuff that, I mean, we don't even, people are working on their desks with keyboards when they should be down below. And that's it. This is for 11 workstations. Right now, just to let you know, the current balance in contingency is $108,478. So there's money in there.
Any discussion, comments? Evelyn?
I'm just gonna remind I have no problem with doing this and sending this forward, but when Brian LaFleur's office needed a chair and a desk on the recommendation of Amy Clute, and it was much less money than this, there was an enormous hoopla over that, and there's $16,000 here, so I just wanna point out that lovely recollection of mine.
Well, maybe Amy could come over and take one of the old chairs and
It's entirely
Well, we
fine
have
with
new
that.
chairs, we just need desks.
I understand the comment. Any other discussion? We had a motion on this. Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of item 4B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4B is carried. 4C, request to amend resolution number 745 of 2011 to change the unassigned fund balance from $6 million to $12 million, $6 to $12 million to $10 to $16 million. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion. Edna, Gene on the second. Mike, what do we have here?
Well, and I was gonna say that if, you know, with the, multi-year plan coming up after this meeting, although it won't be, this kinda would be a little more clear when we look out into the future a little bit. But my big concern is, twice in the last 8 months, between December of 2014 and July of 2015, I've needed at the end of the month $10 million to pay our bills, because the revenue was not there to pay it, and so we took that out of the unassigned fund balance. So my concern is that I wanna make sure that everybody understands that if we drop into the $10 to $8 million range with the bottom end of our fund balance, we could be in trouble. And I don't wanna have to start borrowing money to make the bills at the end of each month. The $6 million and the $12 million was a good idea at the time, because there was not much of a fund balance. And I think that it's time, in my opinion, to revisit this, to look at this, especially when we're assuming some debt, and we may be assuming a lot more debt in the next few years, which could affect that fund balance. And I would just wanna make sure that we've got a solid bottom number that I can work with to make sure that we're not borrowing.
Does everyone understand that there's a minimum, this is a minimum and maximum interval, that having a healthy fund balance has a lot of benefits, not the least of which is that we don't need to go to short-term borrowing to handle any kind of cash flow or that kind of thing. We can handle it out of our own cash stream, so we avoid the interest rates and costs associated with that kind of thing.
Now, one thing I would like to say that I am a little concerned with the $10 million at the bottom, and I know Paul and I have had this discussion quite a bit. It may be a little too strong, I'm not sure. I wanna make sure it's a level that we can obtain, because if we have this is part of our policy, okay? And if we have this, and we go below it, and we're trying to borrow money, we could run into a problem. But so I'm not, if there's a discussion on that 10 million bottom figure, I'm not hard fast on that. I think we can work a little bit with that, if that's gonna be a tough nut.
Well, let me ask you this question, and maybe Frank, you might wanna chime in as well. Annually, we do go to our fund balance, right, to provide revenue to our annual operating condition. And so if we were I guess I would set the example, if our fund balance were to begin to decline substantially, could we not find ourselves in a situation where we've hit the 10 million, or we expect to hit the 10 million, and then there'd be no dollars available from a budgeting point of view?
Yeah, yes.
In that,
'Cause I mean, the other side of this
now, I'm not saying that's exclusively a bad thing. That can
Yeah.
be a good thing, because then it makes you recognize the fact that, you need a certain amount in your fund balance to operate.
Yeah.
And that you really don't wanna go below that.
And the other part of this is that a state audit of the county several years ago stated that we also need to keep at least $4.5 million available for delinquent property taxes to cover that. So that's also part of that unassigned fund balance. So, I mean, it's a delicate balance. I wanna make sure that the county is represented, that everybody, the Board of Supervisors and everybody understands where that line is, so that if we start getting close to it, we can start panicking, basically.
What's the sentiment of the board, Mr. Taylor?
I hate to make this any more painful than we've already made it today, but how does this relate to the cash flow, report that you put out, Rob? 'Cause that normally says we've got anywhere from 25 million to 40 million.
Well, that depends on the time of the year. All right, December and January, we have no cash flow. Okay, so anything we have no revenue, I should say. So anything that we're spending in those 2 months has to come out of the unassigned fund balance. February is a little bit better. By the end of February and March and into April, we're getting in our $40 million in property tax. So that floods that. Then we start getting our sales tax checks, so that starts bringing that fund up. Then we hit like July of this year, because everything, just the way things lined up, we were almost $10 million short. But if you look at those reports, and you take I don't know if I've got one with me or not, I should have brought one. But if you take one of the line items off of those, there might have been one included in your packet. You'll see the difference, whether it's a plus or a minus, where we are as far as the actual cash on hand and how much we had to spend to keep things going.
Frank, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, last year we appropriated 2.7 million of our fund balance to make our budget. Currently, we're at 14.7 at the end of 2014.
Right.
We appropriated 600,000 of that, so we're actually about 14.1. So actually, you know, if you make your bottom 10 million, then you have 4 million in fund balance. So, you know, you either start lowering the unexpended, what you're spending, or what you're using of your fund balance to make your budget work, cut expenses, or you're gonna run short, and it's had it for 3 years.
Paul, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to share with the committee, two things. One, when we set this up, the county, was literally, as Mike mentioned, borrowing to make payroll back in those days. The fund balances were in the neighborhood of 3.5 million. And when we structured this 6 to 12, we knew the 6 was very, very low, but at least my thinking on this was that we wanted it something that could be attainable. We didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we set a bottom number that was so high that we couldn't attain it, and it would reflect poorly on the county. So we said, what is the absolute bare minimum we really need just to basically try to, you know, be in somewhat shape of not borrowing, and we came up with $6 million at that time. And that was, like I say, on the low side. On the flip side, though, we also said, what is that top number? Because your top number is, what you're essentially saying is that if we're sitting at 12 million, that's fine, and we don't have to spend that down. So if you set it at 16 million, you're saying 16 million is fine, and we don't have to spend that down. That's not too much money to be hanging on to as far as just having a cushion. So you're really doing two things here, and then when you set the policy, how your books end up is going to reflect, ultimately, as Mike mentioned, in credit ratings and everything else. So that's point number one. Point number two is, as far as Mike's point of 10 million, I absolutely appreciate where he's coming from, that you got to have 10 million if you need 10 million to pay all your bills in 1 month. But as he pointed out, it came out twice, and just because you set a floor doesn't mean we still can't keep 10 million handy. It just means that here's where we know we're in trouble. My thought had been, and Mike knows this because I shared it with him, that I thought a floor of 8 or 9 was better, because, not because that's what we, for rock bottom purposes, Mike needs, but because that's the signal to the board that, hey, you fall below this number, you're in trouble. You can't let this happen. On the flip side, if you have a high number, the question is when is it that it's too high that you want to start spending? So really, if you adopt 16 million, you're saying, then if we have a $16 million surplus, that's not too high, that's fine. We won't put $1 million towards roads, for instance, or we don't have to spend it down. We don't have to apply it towards anything. And to be frank with you, I'm a little concerned that 16 may be too high. Paul Dussek's opinion, that's all. But, you know, so my thought, and then I'm concerned about, and you know, when we do get to the multi-year plan, you'll see where your fund balance goes, and to let some of the stuff out of the box, we're in good shape, but the fund balance does start to deteriorate as we go out in years, because we have some underlying fundamentals that still need to be worked on, and we'll get into all of that. But if that's true, my concern would be, I'd hate to see the county set themselves up into a situation where you fall below the ranges that you've set as a board, or you trap yourself in not having flexibility. If you feel 16 million is plenty of money and I want to spend $1 million on roads, to be able to drop to 15 comfortably and not reflect poorly on the county. So the upshot is that I would think we would definitely want to strive to be in that $10 million range, but if you fell to, say, 9, I don't think that would be the end of the world. And on the upside, I don't think it has to, you know, it was a 6 million spread before. I don't think it necessarily has to be a 6 million spread. It could be, you know, 9 to 15 or 9 to 14 or something like that. Probably 9 to 15 I'd feel more comfortable with myself. But So I'm coming in probably, well, just $1 million under where Mike is, and I know Mike and I have talked at length about these issues over the time, and nobody has a crystal ball, nobody has the magic number, but it's a judgment call that you folks will make, and I just want you to have all the information possible, that's all.
So the way, at least the way I think about this is the bottom number is, the alarm bell, right? Because we had found ourselves in a situation where the fund balance had been largely depleted, because it was being used for annual operating. And then one day we found ourselves in 2009 or thereabouts, especially in the midst of the recession, in a not a very good spot. So the policy was that we would set a fund balance that we knew would keep us operating correctly, and on the upside would be the maximum on the fund balance, and one of two things would happen beyond the maximum, I would expect, and I'll stand corrected on this, or it can be expanded, that if the fund balance goes beyond a certain amount and is not spent on capital or normal operating conditions, I would assume it would have to be returned to the taxpayers. Right. It would be returned to the taxpayers as a credit against the tax rate. So that's how you have to think about this thing. Frank?
And the 2.7 unassigned or unexpended, that's how it's not a static number, but just because we use that this year doesn't mean that's what's going to be in 2016. And the fund balance is also not a static number. It depends on your revenue, how much revenue you take in. It also depends on how much money of the budget that you actually spend, what you actually have left, and the other revenue. So it's not just we're going to spend 2.7 this year, and then we're going to spend another 2.7. It's not like
My whole town budget's only $6 million.
Just one more comment, Mr. Chairman, too. You may want to wait to decide this after you see the multi-year plan, and maybe that'll give you additional information, because when you can see the future fund balances, maybe that'll help to, give you a better feel for what you think the right numbers will be.
I would not have a problem with that, Mr. Chairman, waiting until after the multi-year plan is unveiled.
Mark?
We're not gonna have the budget meeting today, so I assume the materials have been produced. Is there any way we can distribute the multi-year plan and the materials? We can all take a look at it and be more prepared for when we go into the next budget meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that was distributed a week ago. It was sent out and is online.
It's online?
Yes.
Alrighty, I think at this stage, I think the prudent thing would be to wait for the budget meetings, look at the 5-year plan. The chair would entertain a motion to table this item.
I think we should have a motion to, oh goodness, we went over this in legislative. What did Martin determine that it was? It's not a tabling motion.
Remove from consideration.
Remove from consideration, thank you, Martin.
You would...
We wanna get it right if we can.
Okay, so the motion is to remove from consideration, for the time being, item 4C. Is that the motion?
Yes, it is.
We have the motion. Do we have a second to the motion? Mr. Dickinson?
I know what it means, but
All those in favor of removing from consideration item 4C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Item 4D, review of the treasurer's 2016 budget request.
Rob is distributing them right now. I'm not sure how, do you want me to go through line items? Do you want me to just give you a general overview?
Yeah, I think the general overview, let's go right to the bottom line, I think.
Our revenues are down a little bit, but that's attributable to one big thing, which is this year we will be paying off a debt service of, there was a bond made for computers at ACC, and that was an annual payment of $96,000. So that's coming off the books for next year, so that's one of the main reasons that our revenue's down, but it's also, it's a corresponding expense that isn't there either. We have changed a few things. One of the things I do want to point out is the sales tax revenue. We've left that flat in this budget, waiting for basically the budget officer and Paul to make a decision as to where they feel comfortable with on that sales tax income. So that could change. I just want to note that I just did see it this morning. I think we're up 1.6% on sales tax from this time last year. So you know, we've got a lot of penalties, on our expense side, the other thing is the casino Indian money, we've estimated that at about $450,000. That was, it used to be, if you look on the second page, you'll see games of chance, that's where it came in because it was not budgeted for. It was, one of those gift type things, all of a sudden it showed up, and we've moved it into tribal contract money. So that's why it's zeroed out before and zeroed after on the games of chance. Any other questions about, the other thing is that the tobacco money has been going down, a little bit every year. We got $448,000 back in 14. For 15, we just got the check, it was around $384,000. So that money is dropping down a little bit every year. So we're trying to reflect that in the budget with a $380 figure. $380,000 figure, I should say. On the expense side, most of our expenses are fixed as far as salaries, benefits, and contractual and maintenance. We're required by law to have 3 different types of audits. We're paying maintenance on the New World software, which is the accounting software. The folder sealer we have that takes care of paychecks and so forth, that's maintenance. So that's, any questions about as you're going through? I'm not trying to go as quick, behind
Yeah,
me.
I just have,
Peter?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question on page 105, budget reward sheet report, getting down to 1231, occupancy tax administration.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at the 2015 actual versus the 2016 departmental request.
The law requires, as stated, a 3% fee for the treasurer's office. So we took what was collected last year and took 3% of that, and that's where we come up with the 114.
Peter, I think that's by statute.
Yes, that's by statute.
Rachel?
Mike, I know we talked about chargebacks briefly earlier this morning. I just had a question as it related to, understating 3289 for SIP.
Oh.
And, you know, that says 0,
Where are you? I'm sorry.
page 205.
Which one now?
SIP under state aid.
FLT, the tribal compact?
No, I'm sorry, the Fashion Institute chargeback.
Oh, I'm sorry, down there, yep. They're, we no longer get those.
Right, that's what okay. Right.
That's why it's zeroed all the way across. It just hasn't been taken out of the report.
Okay.
Alrighty, well, what's the pleasure of the committee here? Anything, Bud? We have a motion by Supervisor Taylor to approve the treasurer's budget for 2016. Is there a second to this? Bill Kenny on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of approving the 16 budget request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mike. Referral from the County Facilities Committee, airport request to establish a capital project H-362 Airport Natural Gas Conversion in the amount of $35,000. Gerald, a motion. Evelyn on the motion. Do we have a second? Edna on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 5 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 5 is carried. Item 6, referrals from the Health Services Committee, Mental Health, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $19,920 to reflect acceptance of funding from the New York State Office of Mental Health. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 6. We have a motion to approve items 6A through 6E, was it, Mr. Sokol? Through 6E. Do we have a second to that? A second by Mr. Merlino. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion to approve items 6A through E signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 6A through E, approval is approved. Westmount Health Facility, item F, a request to appropriate $398,790 from the Westmount fund balance and to amend the budget as per the attached. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item F. Mr. Sokol on the motion, second. Edna Frazier on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, All those in favor of approving item F signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 7, referrals from the Park Operations and Management Committee. 7A, request to authorize the appropriation of $998.82 from the Gaslight Village parking fee and to authorize reimbursement to the Village of Lake George for expenses incurred in relation to events held at Festival Commons. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 7A.
I'll move A through C.
We have a motion from Supervisor Kenny to approve items A through C. Do we have a second to that motion? Mr. Molino on the second. Any further discussion? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving items 7A through C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Items 7A through C are approved. Item 8, referral from the Public Safety Committee, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $20,000 to reflect the receipt of 2015 SLETPP, Sheriff Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Program grant funds. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 8. Mr. Molino on the motion, Ms. Frazier on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 8 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 8 is carried. Item 9, referral from the Public Works Committee, DPW, request to increase capital project H342 Blair Road over Millbrook in the amount of $763,940.85. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 9A. Mr. Taylor on the motion, Mr. Merlino on the second. Any further discussion on item 9A? There being none, all those in favor of approving 9A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 9A is carried. 9B, request to establish capital project H361 Brant Lake Lower Dam in the amount of $45,000. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9B. Mr. Kenny on the motion, Mr. Sokol on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of approving 9B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 9B is carried. 9C, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $176,398 to transfer local match funds for various capital projects. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9C. Evelyn on the motion, second. Mr. Dickinson on the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item 9C is carried. 9D, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $25,538.15 to transfer local match funds for capital project H362 Airport Natural Gas Conversion. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9D. Mr. Dickinson, Edna Frazier on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of 9D signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 9D is carried. 9E, request to close capital project H318, 2011 bridge rehab projects and authorize the estimated funds remaining of $4,868 to the debt service fund. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9E. Mr. Dickinson, on the second. Mr. Taylor, thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of 9E signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Item 9E is carried. Item 10, request items to be discussed by the county administrator. We have the journal report of transfers approved by the county administrator since the last finance committee meeting. It's item 10. Do we need to approve that?
No, this is just my report to
Right.
you, since you've given me the authority to do these.
Right.
I will say there's really nothing, that I found troubling. You'll see a bunch for Westmount, but that correlates to the budgeting of Westmount, because if you recall, we only budgeted part of the year, and now this is the, there's a lot of adjustments for Westmount, but not to be alarmed. It's all part of, the plan.
Okay, very good. Finance committee action is required on the following items as approved by the Personnel Committee, agenda items 2, 3, 4A, 4B, 5, and 6. Evelyn on the motion, Mr. Kenny on the second. Any further discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 11 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we do we need to, take action on the motion to hire the, special attorney? Or is that gonna go directly to the board?
That'll go to the board, but it should have been included in that last one.
Was it? It wasn't listed, was it?
No, I think we did that from the floor, I don't think it was,
Right.
on the agenda.
Is there a number associated with that?
There's not, that was just from.
There's not. I think just to, be consistent here, Chair will entertain a motion, to, consider, item approved that the Personnel Committee to hire a special attorney, to look into the,
We did two sets of, two different,
Right.
parts one and two, perhaps.
right, you wanna articulate that since you made the motion, Evelyn?
Hang on a second, so I've still got it written down.
Got it
We don't-
somewhere.
We don't have it in hard copy in front of us, so.
See, so we would be, designating a source of funding for representation for the Board of Supervisors in connection with the personnel matter of the county administrator, and secondly, attorney or attorneys to review, and the investigative report on the Siemens investigation and provide advice and counsel. I'm guessing we would use, fund balance as the source of funding, or?
I believe
Contingency fund.
Contingency, I think that can come from the
Contingency.
contingency fund, so the source would be the contingency fund. Do we have a second to that? Mr. Dickinson on the second, any further discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Is there any other business to come before the committee?
Do we have to see Larry?
We do. Larry's been very patient.
He's been sleeping.
Uh,
No, I haven't.
We've had an open meeting with Larry.
What's he on for? I don't know what he's on for.
Martin's not here. Larry, could you come forward for a second? Are you here to report on your, do you need an executive session? Okay. All right, we do have, Larry here, oh, Dan, I thought you had left. I'm sorry, I apologize. Mr. Gerard, I saw you leave the room, and my apologies. My apologies.
I'll go very fast.
Yeah.
For the last 4 years at the Balloon Fest, to supplement our overtime costs, we've been accepting donations for parking. Who has been instrumental in that has been, DFW Post 2475 at 30 Cooper in Glens Falls, New York. They've done it all 4 years. The first 2 years, they were helped by Realty USA. The agreement that we had contractually is that they would get 10% of the take, okay? And, so they have appropriately done that for the 4 years, but it amounts to, somewhere between $800 and $1,000. And the time requirements in the manpower is significant on a weekend like that. They were asking if there's any way they could get any more money, and I talked over to Commander Michael Hoyt. I think they would be agreeable to $1,500, because this is very weather dependent. If we had a bad weekend, they would get nothing, and they commit all this, and they would, 10% of nothing isn't. So I would like to see a ceiling, or a baseline of $1,500, and then 15%, whichever is more. And I told them when they approached me about this that it was too short a time to bring it before you and get it corrected, but I would try to make it retroactive to this year if the committee saw value in that. They collected almost $10,000. They have tweaked it to make it even better, and it is arduous, to say the least, to be standing out there that amount of time, and they certainly deserve it. This financially, my understanding, unless the treasurer corrects me, is this is money that goes to the Balloon Festival, and then their percentage comes out, or it gets sent to us. In other words, we would be getting less in the offset of the overtime cost. But they have, they're trying their hardest to get more money, and what I see is they're instrumental in the donations, because people really do like supporting the veterans along with the Balloon Festival. So they've worked hand in hand. It's been a really good thing. Any questions?
Mike?
Just as a personal note, I've been out there almost every year with Dan, and a lot of other people have been out there, and these guys really, they work it. They really work it to get that money.
and they're not youngsters, so it's not easy.
Familiar with the request?
I believe I have an email from, I'm sorry, I believe I have an email from Supervisor Giroux, correct?
You got an email from me yesterday.
From Paul, okay. I have not had an opportunity to study it yet.
I tried to address it at facilities, but, Paul wanted to do a little research on the resolutions and where we were at with that, and he said possibly we could, address it in finance. So that's, rather than let it go any longer, at least I brought it up, if there's some more research done, whatever, and we could look into it, they would certainly appreciate, they do a lot of good, their money generally goes off to help other nonprofits, and they do a wonderful job. Ironically, this balloon festival has fallen on when they have their biggest fundraiser of the year, that's their golf tournament. So it makes it even more difficult to get that volunteer work out of their membership.
Yes, and I did look at the baseline resolutions and agreements, and that's what prompted me to contact Martin, because we have contracts in place that specify what the percentages are and everything, and the event is done, everybody signed on to this thing. So my concern was, you know, as to retroactivity, and Dan, I kinda explained this, tried to explain this to Dan just before the meeting, but we need to really check to see if there is a, you know, legal mechanism available to make such an adjustment at this point. There may be, I just wanted to give Martin an opportunity to look at this, or there may not be, because, you know, we did sign, everybody agreed to this already, you know, as to what the arrangements would be. Certainly going forward, I think it's a legitimate concern, I can appreciate that, but I just wanted to make sure that we took a look at, you know, making sure we can do this, that's all.
Dennis?
I'd like to make that motion and make it good from now on, and if it's legal, I'd like to make it retroactive for this year.
Right, Mr. Sokol, everyone understand the motion, that, we'd like to see this adjustment, going forward, and that if there's an avenue to, do it retroactively to this year, that we would,
Your review.
support that as well. I would assume that this would then, assuming it was legal and what could be done, since that's actually a condition on it, that the approval, that if it's legal, then it'll go forward to the full board for action.
Sure.
If it's not, it will not.
Okay.
Is everyone's understanding? Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Alrighty, Chair will entertain a motion to, go into executive session to, discuss and, perhaps
Yes,
we should articulate for the record.
Yep, a motion for executive session to, discuss with, special counsel, the matter of, potential claims with respect to, Siemens, and to hear specific advice, and counsel from our special counsel under the CPLR.
You've heard the, purpose of the executive session. We have a motion, Mr. Dickinson, a second to go into executive session. Ms. Frazier, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Need any more water, Bill?
We're in executive session, thank you.
Be floating away before we get done.
Oh, no.